Welcome to Marci Talks Money and Life with your host, Money Marci.
Hello, I am Money Marci, and welcome. I am thrilled to welcome today's guest, Kisha Woods. Kisha Woods, known as Coach K Transforms, is an award-winning certified life and business coach and CEO of Upgraded MindsetZ. She equips women with strategic, supportive tools to elevate themselves personally and professionally. Since launching her business in 2020, she's created a bold ecosystem of coaching, motivating content, and a raw and unique approach that inspires women to align and activate the best versions of themselves with clarity and unapologetic confidence. Kisha launched Upgraded MindsetZ as a part-time coach in June of 2020. Stepping into full-time entrepreneurship shortly after, she co-founded UPM Suites in West Peoria, Illinois in March 2021 and has evolved it into a collaborative business and resource hub of multiple women business owners that offer a dynamic blend of products, services, and supportive resources for the community. Kisha blends her transformational coaching approach with lived experience and is very transparent about her journey of reconditioning her beliefs, systems, and breaking generational barriers. She is also an avid advocate for mental health, a motivational speaker, an Amazon best-selling author, a 2-times podcast host, and active in her community through multiple organizations. Her impact has earned multiple honors, including Entrepreneur of the Year, community votes, and other recognitions in her local community and online. Whether coaching clients, hosting her podcast, or collaborating to expand community resources, Kisha is not just a talker. She is an unapologetic doer who will stop at nothing to help women prioritize themselves and understand that they can be supportive to others, but not at the expense of themselves. Welcome, Kisha.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me, Marci.
I am thrilled to have you. I was on your podcast a few years ago, back when I was first
Yes.
promoting my book, and I am so thrilled to be able to return the favor and share everything that you are over here.
Oh, thank you so much. And just being back in your space and in your energy is just so dope. And to see how you've evolved and stepped into other areas and also elevating with yourself in the podcast as well. So thank you for having me.
It is my pleasure. I love all the things that you talk about, and while you're woman focused and I'm not, the information we're sharing goes across everything. I mean,
Absolutely.
women need
Absolutely.
to learn finances, and everyone needs to learn to empower themselves. So it just
Yes.
is educational, informative, whatever you want to call it, and fun to have you here.
Yes. Absolutely. Absolutely. I love it.
So let's talk about the financial aspects of your journey that got you to where you are with the coaching and everything else.
Okay. So going back to like really when I was actually let go from my corporate job in 2020, I didn't have, the systems in place to have 6 months of savings and have all that. I didn't have those things. And in the beginning, yeah, I was ashamed of that. I've, obviously shaken that mindset, but that was a scary feeling to be let go from a job and not having enough to cover your expenses for 6 months. I didn't realize the importance of it because I wasn't taught it so much. Growing up, it was just more so of the you just take care of things how you take care of them. Nobody talked about savings, nobody talked about anything. And a part of my personal transformation was also understanding that I could not continue to think or live like that. If I wanted to start my business, there was finances that were needed. If I wanted to begin legacy creating, there were finances that needed to be created. So I think really understanding that part of money and finances was critical for me because it also aligned with me upgrading my own mindset, which is kind of where the business name came from. Just ready to upgrade everything about my life, my mind, my spirit, and my finances for sure. So that's So it all kind of aligned together, just really taking on a new relationship with the conversations about money and being open to talk about it, because I think we don't like to talk about money a lot. So being open to have those conversations as with you today. So
Yeah, my whole thing is about getting people to talk about money with the people that they need to be talking about their money with, and learning to shake past that. And mindset and things like that are really your area. So what were things other than, I guess, initially desperation that really helped you break past those barriers?
I think first for me is to start to seek out people that were talking about it. One thing that I know that we will do is try to stay around those that may not be having those what I call growth minded conversations. So I think the first step for me surrounding the finance side of it was really just starting to maybe start listening to podcasts that maybe talked about money, YouTube. I'm a big YouTuber, as far as for my channel, but also where I go to be inspired and listen to other things as well. So really starting to seek out those things. Still wasn't quick to say, "Oh, I'm ready to have a conversation about it," but I was ready to listen more. So starting that for myself, it then prompted me to continue to want to say, I've got to talk to somebody about this. I file my own taxes every year up until I became self employed, because being self employed, obviously the tax strategies are a little bit different, and I'm not 100% familiar with that. So that also prompted conversations with other people surrounding my self employment status, but also ways that I could really activate ways to grow my money mindset, and my money in the bank. And during COVID as well, I also took into stocks. I got into a couple of groups that talked about like beginner stocks and trading. And I even tried to day trade for a little while. That is definitely not my forte. Whoever else does it, great for them, but it wasn't something for me. But making sure that I was still doing the research and also being in those spaces where people were teaching me about the charts and things like that. So, really just getting yourself in spaces where money is the conversation. So, you do become more comfortable with having those conversations. I think that was probably critical for me. That was 2020, 2021 was really when those shifts happened. And I still utilize those groups, those spaces, those conversations to this day.
That's awesome. But now I guess you're getting to a point where you can speak up a little bit more rather than sitting there and taking it
Yeah,
all in. You've now got things to share with the group. And that's got to be nice to
absolutely.
feel yourself moving from that learning mindset into that sharing position. Let's pause for a quick break.
Loving to share from personal experience is probably one of the best things, one of the satisfying moments, not just from a coaching perspective, but from a personal perspective. People want to hear real stories. They want to be able to hear things that are relatable to them. And you're right on that, Marcy. Like being able to now speak to the ones that maybe just are coming into the spaces and who were me, 4 and 5 years ago, being able to tell them, hey, I used to be where you're at. Here's what I gained from this. Here's the experiences that I did, but not trying to force how I did things on them, but to encourage them to want to do their own research for themselves. And especially when we're dealing with stocks, I definitely do not tell it, hey, do your own research, but being able to speak about that from a personal perspective is pretty awesome.
Now, when you got laid off, that I assume you weren't saying, "Oh boy, they're going to come through and cut people," and I hope I'm not one of them. It was more sudden than that.
It was definitely sudden. I was literally working and was actually asked to come to the other office, and I was literally walked out from there. Not to mention, and I'll throw this in there, I literally had been, my identity had been compromised 6 weeks prior, from unemployment. So, mind you, I'm fighting for my identity during a time where nothing is open. I've got to do everything online because everything's on lockdown. And I literally just lost my paychecks. So I literally went 6 months with no income because I eventually got approved for unemployment, but the uncertainty of just going week to week, knowing that there's no income coming in, all of the hangups from calling unemployment, not getting through, having to send over my ID 55 times because I'm sending it over, but nobody's taking care of it. It's just sitting. So, literally, from November of 2020 to May of 2021, there was no income coming into my bank accounts. So, I'm emotionally just like, what am I going to do? But really putting faith into my business because I had my business of upgraded mindset. So really stepping up and being able to step into that more and being able to be clear headed enough to be strategic in how I'm offering services. So it really involved me having to just like say, I can't let the fear and the worry overcome because I would have been homeless. So I just really had to put my hustle gear on. And like I said, definitely the stocks played a factor. That definitely carried me over. But also, too, I did receive a few donations. I had to swallow my pride and just accept donations for what it was. That was a trying, very trying 6 months for me. Not knowing where your next income is coming from. Because I was getting paid from coaching, true enough, but it wasn't enough to cover all of the expenses that I had. Not only did I have my home expenses, but I had my building, which I still have to this day. Those expenses, luckily, I had partners that were able to cover that at the time. But just the uncertainty of not knowing where a steady income was coming from, because I'll be honest, Marcy, before I was let go, I did not have a desire to be a full time entrepreneur. And I know that that's probably an unpopular opinion. I did not have a desire to be a full time entrepreneur. I was totally okay with part time coaching and speaking, but still maintaining my corporate job. And alignments just seen otherwise, I guess.
Well, yeah, you kind of have to play the cards that are dealt. What do you think
Absolutely.
contributed to your resilience to get past this? Because it must have been overwhelming all of a sudden. We're
Woo,
in the middle
yes.
of lockdown, which was already emotionally draining on all of us. And then to have this thrown at you as a coach, if you were coaching yourself through that time period, what are the things that you would have said to help someone in a similar situation get
Yeah.
moving, keep moving?
I think I would have had to, and I would say to this day, you've got to really dig deep inside and figure out what your next moves are going to be. You can't move from a level of haste, havoc, chaos, because that's not going to get you where you need to go. Because when you're in this state, it's what you need to do at this point, not necessarily what you want to do. That needs to be kind of right behind it. But when you're operating from a sense of urgency, then you're going to need to be strategic. And that, as hard as it is going to involve you having to sit back and think about what your moves are going to be. Because, yes, you are definitely in this stressful situation, but you making stressful moves are not going to help you or benefit you. So, I would just say and recommend you still have to sit down, take those deep breaths, be mindful with your moves and your intentions, and let things work out how they're going to work out, but also be open minded. Mindset is so big to me. We have tunnel vision when it comes to how we think sometimes. So we always assume that things are always just supposed to go this specific way. And when they don't, then we get frustrated and we're like, oh, no, that's not how that's supposed to go. But in all actuality, it is. Because I look back 5 years later and understand that me being terminated from that job was the beginning of the alignment that I have for both of my businesses, my speaking, my podcast. All of those things came into fruition because of that stressful moment. I don't take away the emotions from that. And I even am a little sarcastic about it by telling my former employer, thank you, because without that, I wouldn't be where I am today. So I always go back to that. But I would just tell someone, you still have to sit with yourself. You still have to be mindful, and you still got to give yourself a little grace. Just don't move in haste, because that haste is not going to let you make the decisions that are going to benefit you long term.
Right. And I hadn't really done the math, and I guess it's not really math, the calendar math. So you had already started doing the part-time coaching when this happened.
Yes,
A lot of time, if this had happened a year earlier or at the beginning of COVID, you wouldn't have started the coaching business yet.
probably not. Probably not. Yeah, it was that decision of, do I go look for another job in the middle of lockdown? I can't go anywhere and put in an application. I can file online, or step into this full time. And I made that decision. Now, I won't say that I had 100% faith in being a full time coach. I'll be honest. But just something in my gut just was like, trust the process, Keisha. You're going through these things, and I think that that level probably the highest level of resilience stepping into this journey, with upgraded mindsets. That was the probably the heightened time of the level of resilience, just having faith in what I do and evolving from that. So,
Can I ask what you did for the corporate job that had you
yeah.
even starting to do a part-time coaching business?
Well, I have always been in the customer service spaces. My last job, I actually did billing, coding, and I did that for 7 years. I also did customer service there as well. I helped with like charity assistance and things like that. So I have always been engaged with people. And it's funny because my last job, they called me the bone collector. And they called me that because I was always the person that people could come and talk to. I try to give a little advice, maybe, or sometimes I'm just the sounding board letting them vent. But I never went back and said anything to anybody else. Like, I didn't really partake in telling other people's business. And I always did that. So I kind of was like the unofficial coach, at that point. And I think during a fast that I took for myself in March of 2020, just backtracking on that a little bit, I was on that personal transition and transformation for me. And during that 30-day fast, I realized that I wanted to like officially do that for other people, because looking back in that reflective mode, I was already doing it. So, not calling myself a coach, but just being that supportive person. So it was like, okay, so you really already been doing this, Keisha. So now you just got to figure out how to incorporate it from a coaching perspective. And that's what I did.
Okay, I can barely make it from meal to meal. You did a 30-day fast?
No, it was a social media fast. So I'll clarify that. Yeah, I'm
Okay.
definitely not doing it. So it was it was a 30-day social media fast. I fasted, and I actually ended up journaling every day. I'm just talking about my thoughts, because really I was just tired, Marcy. I was really overwhelmed and tired and stressed out about a lot of things that were going on in life. I spent a lot of years as a people pleaser. I spent a lot of years prioritizing everybody else's needs but myself. Even during my medical moments, I am a cancer survivor, but even during my treatments, I still was prioritizing everybody else. So I think, and also being that unofficial coach to others, I think it was me deflecting on my own journey and deflecting on what I needed to change and shift within me, because I had that outdated belief of, oh, as long as I keep pouring into others, I'll get blessed that way. But I was not satisfied in life. I wasn't satisfied with what I was doing day to day. I wasn't satisfied in my job. I enjoyed talking to customers, but I was not fulfilled. So it was just like a mixture of all of those things. Really just prompted me to take a 30-day fast, which I turned into the Amazon bestseller, which is From Havoc to Healing, 30 Days of Reconditioning. That's literally my 30-day journal, talking about the moves that I was making, the thoughts that I was having, but also the shifts that I was actually doing during those 30 days.
I think a lot of people found a lot of change, whether it's opportunities or situations that force them into it during the COVID lockdowns. And it sounds like you were already kind of going toward this.
I
With
was.
everything that you've been, your whole life has been building the experiences to do the coaching
Yes.
that you're doing now.
That's facts. And I think the uncertainty of COVID at that time, I think, was probably my breaking point. I just was overwhelmed too much, and I started thinking about doing damage, whether it was to myself or it was to other people. I just knew that that was no longer healthy, and I needed to make some shifts with that. So,
Yeah, I
but yeah,
think that might be social media makes us all kind of feel like we want to damage
oh
some
my
people.
gosh, that is a fact.
Let's pause for a quick break. So, can I talk about the breaking generational barriers? What that
Yes.
was like for you?
Absolutely. I think just to kick that off, understanding that when you're breaking generational and really emphasizing on that word generational, understanding that it is not just you, it is not just the person, the generation behind you, it is going back. Having so many set systems in place that really hindered us, from a cultural perspective, from a societal perspective, but really understanding that I don't necessarily believe in the American dream anymore. That was one of the things that I began to break that generational cycle, because the American dream to me is not graduating from high school, going to college, getting a degree. There are so many other variations that can play into that now. And understanding that was probably one of the things. Also, understanding that I don't have to partake in negative, toxic behaviors with family, friends, coworkers, just because of who they are. That's also one of the generational cycles, but also surrounding finances, really understanding that it's okay to have multiple eggs in multiple baskets. I grew up believing that, oh, you just need to have a bank account and you just need to make sure that you have a shoebox of money under your bed, those type of things. And not taken away from those things, because I know that they still apply to this day, but also understanding that I can have my eggs in 8 other baskets as well, because I'm wanting to build wealth, not become rich, but build wealth, create legacy. And understanding those things, again, it required me being in different spaces. You can't learn new things with old people. And not saying that you need to just cut everybody off. If you need to for your mental, then you go ahead. But understanding that you can still be in new spaces and also be in the same spaces as long as they are to the benefit of your growth. But also understanding, Marcy, that you have to remove anything and everybody that is no longer aligning with who you are wanting to become as you're breaking those generational cycles. I've cut relationships, I've cut friendships, I've cut family because of how I think about things, how I look at things. And if that's not something that you're no longer aligned with, or I'll say that I'm no longer aligned with, but you're trying to talk me out of these things and trying to put the fear tactics, then I just have to remove myself from that space. So, really breaking generational cycles for me really kind of involves a little bit of all of that, and doing what you want to do for you. What's mentally and physically, emotionally, and financially satisfying you as an individual, you as a person that may be the head of your family, really putting in policies that depict what you want and what you want to leave as a legacy. So a little bit of all of that.
Yeah, that's so true. We have these cycles. This is just the way the family has always done it.
Yeah.
And you don't know whether it was started by your parents, your grandparents, your great grandparents, something that happened generations ago that this has now become the traditional way we deal
Right.
with XYZ. And you have to take the time to say, that doesn't really serve me anymore. That doesn't serve the world now. The world that I grew up in is not the world my parents grew up in, is not the world
Yes.
my children grew up in. And and taking I hate to say traditions because traditions are a wonderful thing. There's a lot of joy in
Right.
traditions, but then there's also traditions that are more of habits, that are more of expectations, and they have the negative
Absolutely.
weight of those things. So breaking that's hard.
Yeah. And still is hard.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. It's an everyday
Yeah.
thing. People can choose, okay, this is where she's going. I want to go with her there, or this is not where I want to go, and we've got to part ways here. Yeah. And you're also an advocate for mental health. Would you speak to that a little bit?
Absolutely. One thing that when we talk about mental health, our mental health is every day. It's our everyday life. And when people hear mental health, they just automatically assume that you're talking about whether someone's diagnosed or something like that. But our mental health is just as important as our physical health. Just like people go to the gym every day and have a regimen for their physical routine, we need to make sure that we have a regimen for our mental routine. For me, for example, the first 30 minutes of my day mentally go to me, whether it is me journaling, praying, meditating, reflecting. That first 30 minutes is for me to make sure that I am of sound mind. I am making sure that I am mentally effective to tackle the day ahead. And I think why I go so hard for it is because I see so many of us who put our mental health on the back burner because, oh, I'm a mother, I'm a wife, I'll do this later, I'll take care of these things later. And going back to even when I got fired from my job, I was going through a mental transformation personally at that point, and I was tested like crazy. Our mental health is really just making sure that your mind, your body, your spirit, everything about you holistically is in alignment with who you want to be and what you want to do. For those that may have diagnosis, you are not your diagnosis. And really normalizing the conversation surrounding mental health challenges is something that I strive to do because I know people who have diagnoses that are very effective in society. They work every day, they do what they're supposed to do, and they don't let their diagnosis define them. So, understanding the difference between mental health conditions, where you may have a diagnosis, but our mental health is our everyday operations when it comes to our mind, when it comes to how we move, when it comes to the things that we talk about. It's just an everyday thing, and I really work to normalize those conversations.
I think it's awesome, all of the things that you do, Keisha. I
Thank
gotta say,
you.
I'm an accountant. I like being in a room all by myself, and here you're this people person that's out there.
Oh,
So,
I appreciate it.
have you got any advice as we start wrapping up about realigning and reconditioning, working your mindset to get you where you want to go, and things that maybe we haven't mentioned that you want to make sure we touch on?
Absolutely. I would just tell anyone, and this actually speaks from a holistic perspective. If things are not sitting well with you, then you owe it to yourself to evaluate those. The values that you may have followed 10 years ago, 5 years ago, even a year ago, if they are no longer fitting for you, if you no longer believe and you're struggling to maintain that, you owe yourself an evaluation. If you know that you're tired of your money not being put to use from whatever perspective, if you're tired of living paycheck to paycheck, don't allow society to make you feel like you're not able to be successful in the world. I know that we have the news that tries to scare us every day and talks about, oh, the average American is this, but you do have the power, and there are resources out here for you to be able to uplift yourself personally, professionally, financially, emotionally. But you owe it to yourself to have that reflection, to make sure that you are aligned with who you want to be as a person, as an entrepreneur, as a finance guru, whatever it is. You owe it to yourself to evaluate that, because so many times we will just sit and default to what society feels like we're supposed to be doing. You don't have to do that. We are living in current times where there is just so many resources out here for us to better ourselves. Take a chance, have the conversations, reach out, connect with the people that mentorship, guidance, anything that's going to help you be better. I really want to encourage people. As someone who grew up in poverty, as someone who had the mindset of, you know, I'm going to stay in poverty forever up until 2020, please let my lived experience be a level of inspiration for you to at least begin having those conversations like I did. That one conversation could shift your whole trajectory. And I really just encourage everybody to want to do better in life, wherever that looks like for you.
Well, that was awesome. Kisha Woods, Coach K, thank you so much for being my guest today. We appreciate your
Thank you
time.
for having me.
Well, we appreciate you. To my listeners, I will be sharing a link to Kisha's information in the show notes. Please check her out. She shares a lot of interesting information. And don't forget to subscribe, leave us a review, and stay tuned. I'll see you next time. This has been Money Marci on Marci Talks Money and Life. You got this.